Welcome back, everyone. We do have the lobby set up. Just waiting for Namshar to come back from a minute break. And this is the... there's potential for a very similar series. Or a very different one. I mean, the matchup itself demands that it does not go to 40 minutes every single time. But the player situation might be very similar. We have a European, the form of Namshar, who's born in Europe, lives in Europe, who's also usually a more passive defending player. And then you have Erik, who I think lives in Europe, I'm not sure where, but is Brazilian, right? Yes. And is very aggressive. So it's actually kind of a similar setup to the last series, where I would say that Demi is just going to be more aggressive. Not that he comes in from the Latin America region, but a non-European region living in Europe. So it kind of is going to be interesting to see how it turns out. I think ZVZ, as I said, as a matchup demands that it does not play out like that PVZ. It's just too different of a matchup. You know, if it was TVZ, I think we'd still have a very high possibility for that. But ZVZ is just too different. But it can happen. We could see Erik try and be aggressive, Namshar defend accurately, but not, you know, perfectly, I suppose. And then, it continues kind of just be like, well, I can't kill you, and you're not going to kill me. I can't kill you, you're not going to kill me. And then we're here playing a 40-minute Viper Lurker game. It could happen. I guess I'll take this opportunity as we wait for Namshar, or actually Erik, to ready up here, to just talk about what's on the line here for the BBB. I'll do the whole spiel actually when we get into the game, just for anyone who's only just now tuning in. Well, that's not right. There we go. In the top left of Dragon Scales, we have Erik, the Crankly Ducklings. In the bottom right, still on Storm, we have Namshar. One person goes for an extractor trick, the other goes for a typical opener. So yeah, the whole spiel here, right, is that I am hosting this week's BBB because Roddy is actually going to, I believe, Demo's wedding, which I was invited to, but it's a bit of a trip just to get to Sweden super casually. Although Sweden is beautiful, and I'm sure it's a beautiful wedding. Then when they asked Rainer, but then like the Africa champion thing kind of came up and it was a bit of a surprise. So then I got asked, and even though I was moving, I was very excited for the opportunity. So I said, heck yeah, once I determined I actually could do it. And then we have 4 series to play out today. We've already gone through 2. We had earlier today, to start things off, Boanon defeating Azura 3-1 with some pretty fun games. I suggest you go and watch that. Jaitan, thank you for the tier 1 sub. We just saw Deka take down Demi, but in a much closer series than the overall result says. But it was a 3-0. Now we head into Erik Namshar, and we do have some cheese on the way. And then we finally go into Showtime versus a laser. But we do have a cheese on the way, so let me just go ahead and refocus up on the game. Erik going for the extractor trick into the pool, gas, and now the bailiness all on one base is leading the charge with 2 drones. Namshar will see this. This is not necessarily unexpected. As I was discussing out of the game, Erik is the aggressor, the non-European, but living in Europe, I believe, aggressing against the very much more standard defensive player that is Namshar, who did go to Canada for 2 or 3 years, but is now back in Sweden, I believe. So anyways, that covers it. We have the aggression beginning. Erik with Lings, Banelings, and Spine Crawlers. Namshar not at all going to try and defend the natural, because that would be crazy talk. Defending the main base. Spine Crawlers coming up here. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yep, no reason to lose all 4 Lings to 1 Baneling. If you could grab 1 Baneling with 1 Ling, that would be so awesome. Actually, grabbing 2 possibly. Nope, just 1. Just one. One spike crawler will have to be canceled, but two are almost inevitably going to finish. No, not that one either. One's gonna finish. Or is it? Or is it the banelings guarding away the drones? They pop off, they help kill the spine crawler, and Namshar is spine crawlerless. In a situation where he kind of needs them, but that did just use all of the banelings. So was that somehow a good thing? I could see the argument. Lings attacking the hatchery, which is definitely dead anyway. Really just doing something while they wait for the banelings to form again. I don't know the plan for these spine crawlers, but they could try and go up into the main base. I guess. If they can't go over here anymore, creeps are already receding. Baneling's gonna open up the opportunity to head into the main base. Namshar just trying to buy some time. Two spine crawlers once again on the way. These ones are going to finish. Totally miscalled the last few, but these ones 100% are going to finish. And with two spine crawlers, that is just not enough pressure from Erik to destroy them. One spine crawler would probably have been enough. Namshar might not have had a lot to work with, but what he threw down was a lot to chew through for Erik, who just doesn't have a lot of units when you do this build. A one-base build does not give you a lot of units. If you then put some of the units you do have into banelings, which, you know, want to be very careful about how they're used. And then the spine crawlers, you know, they can't really contribute to the main fight. Like, that means that there were very few units to even start to, I guess, work with the momentum that was gained from the killing of the spine crawlers. It was like, oh my god, they're dead. Wait, there's nothing here. Never mind. Okay. And now the problem is, does Erik macro out of this better? Or does Namshar? Because we did have a cheese that couldn't... It didn't have legs. That's what that's the phrase I'm looking for. It had no legs. But it did put your opponent back on one base, which means that you're both very similar economies. And now you head into... Is there music? There doesn't sound like it. And then now you're going into a second base faster. Are you ahead? Probably. And if we're really going to be very nitpicky and set an impossibly high bar for Namshar, you could argue that that second spine crawler was a complete waste. I'm not certain that he could have gotten away with no spine crawler. That seems a little sketch. But, you know, he maybe could have canceled this one. And then we've had one more drone, 100 more minerals in his pocket, and that would have gone a long way to making sure that the game remains even. But like I said, a very, almost impossibly high bar, because in the action, you would absolutely believe you would need a second spine crawler. And Namshar is going to be able to get the macro going. Erik, though, not really looking to macro up for too much longer. A Roach Warren on a 3-base setup might be a macro, just setting it up for the later game, but it's 2-base setup. 6 roaches are on the way. Gonna be reinforcing with a flood of lings. Erik, he does like to be aggressive. No doubt about that. No doubts. And Namshar is the one who is usually far more defensive. Now, it's Zerg, it's EVZ, it's a best of 5. Namshar might try and return the favor here and cheese in one of these games, but then you run into the possibility of cheesing a cheeser, and then usually the cheeser is more comfortable in that position. So do you really want to do that? Thank you, True Chains 24 for the 32 months. And the answer is usually no. 2 spine crawlers now going to be very helpful for this defense. So I have to, I guess, take back what I said about the second one. I guess he could have canceled it and then rebuilt it, but that is being awfully nitpicky. 2 spines are going to help. 3 spines are going to be even better. 4th one in the mineral line as well. I do like that, but Namshar needs actual units on the field here. 1 spine falls. Both the queens are going to fall. They might have had to transfuse. If they were able to buy a couple more seconds, they might have had a transfuse, but Namshar had no army available. Those spine crawlers tried to buy some time, but 9 roaches are far too late to production. Far too late. Erik's follow-up attack, it didn't seem like it had a lot of punch when it started, but all of those lings coming in then, this one had legs. And now it's entering into the mineral line. Ravagers actually almost cross-balling their own units. They did. Those lings died. But it's the drone surround that's going to win. Are you serious? The drone surround is good enough? Takes down the last Ravagers. The link count got too low, and the 6 drones going down still puts Namshar only 3 drones behind. There is a possibility for a macro game. Not a very pretty one for Namshar, but he is technically alive. Maybe not for long. Roach is getting completely surrounded by Lings. Even with their upgrades, still going to be too many units to deal with, and that's going to be it, I think. Yeah. No possibility for macro game. Completely done with. Namshar needed to ensure the survival of, I guess, the 6 roaches that he had. And he did not. GG. And even if he did save those roaches and didn't get overwhelmed by Lings, he would have been 2 base to 3 base. It would have been a very ugly game for him. So Erik's aggression does finally work out, and he does win game number 1. Because we got a cheese, I didn't get to the part that I wanted to bring up, which was what do these guys get for playing in these tournaments? Basilisk, the organizer, as nice as they are, fronts in the $500 prize pool. So we had Boanan getting $75. Deca got 100, and the winner of this will get 125. And then the winner of Showtime a Laser will get 200. So that's pretty nice. I believe the losers also get some money. I do not have the prize breakdown for that, though. And I don't want to go off memory just in case I'm wrong. If anyone has the numbers, please let me know. Oh, yes. 60, 15, 75, 25... What's the next one? I was gonna say because it looks like it would be 125 for the third one. There you go. Okay, so $75 total prize pool for the first series. So that means that Boanan got 60, Azura got 15, Deca. We're just waiting for the players to join, by the way. Deca got 75 or 80, and then Demi got 20, and then the winner of this will get 100, and the loser will get 25. Still a nice payday for what can often be less than an hour, best of 5. Although Deca and Demi almost made it a 2-hour ordeal. They actually didn't, because it ended up with 3-0. It was still about an hour. So I think we're completely on schedule. I didn't get a schedule, but I think we are, which is always a nice feeling. And here we go. Here we go. You know what I have not done here? I have not done bets at all. I knew I was forgetting something. And wrong overlay again. I think we can do bets for this one. You know, we'll make them quick. And obviously there's already a little bit of information, but I think we're still going to have a possibility for a very even series. So we'll do some bets for this. In the bottom right, we do have Erik winning game 1. And in the top left, we do have Namshar. It does kind of feel like the setup for today's games, perhaps all of them. Yeah, probably all of them, actually. We don't know if Azura is really a macro Protoss, to be fair, because he could have done 1 base all-ins and 2 base all-ins and whatever in PvP, but we just don't know because he got cannon rushed. So the trend for today's series is one player being very aggressive, another player being defensive macro, and then a almost like secondary trend is having non-Europeans living in Europe being the aggressors. Erik is going for another extractor trick, but is also going for an actual hatchery this time. So definitely not the same build as the last one. If the build last game won, no problem, easy peasy, Namshar totally screwed up, Erik might have done it again. But far more likely is that Erik will know that Namshar will technically know how to deal with everything. will almost defend a lot of things. And so he's going to have to be tasked with keeping things fresh. Always making sure to have a different cheese in mind. If that is his plan, I don't think Erik is without the potential of a macro game. I think when he does play macro games, it looks totally fine. You know, it's not like his skill falls off a cliff as soon as he makes more than 40 drones. So that is a possibility. And while Namshar, I would say in the past, and by the past, I do mean 5 or 6 years ago, would have been to me, hands down, the victor if it was a macro game, it's very different now. Namshar was one of the most consistent Zerg players, like, ever. He was consistently improving, but perhaps not at a super fast rate, which is probably disappointing. And he then was trying to become one of the best macro Zerg players back when there was a lot of macro Zerg players in Europe. So he kind of got overlooked often, I would say. Then he moved to North America, did some schooling over there, I believe, in Canada. Played North American regionals. Actually had some trouble. Didn't necessarily just move on over and dominate. And then continued playing North America up until not last season, but the season before that, in which he was, again, doing okay, but certainly not dominating the playing field, having been part-time for the last few years, studying and moving and getting a job or whatever he's doing now. Erik did go for his early queens, I believe, with the opener, the 15 hatch. But this is far more interesting. We got this fast lair that is unscouted. The Ling of Namshar was ever so close to grabbing the scouts, but instead it died just outside, similar to Erik's scout here. Now Erik is doing something a little cheeky with that faster lair. Or is he? Maybe not, actually. But he's not going to do anything cheeky as in make units an attack. Then it's going to look like kind of a useless lair. So I can't imagine that he's not going to attack. The Roach Warren and upgrade and lair timing of Namshar just screams a very defensive posturing of ZVZ, right? You can go into 2 bases, get yourself a nice little wall, and slowly grab a 3rd base. There's a lot of things you could be doing behind it, of course. You could be doing a Ling all-in cheese. You could be doing a Nidus Worm. You could be doing surprise mutas behind this wall. But Namshar is certainly more likely to be going for the humdrum, slower 3rd base, safe Roach play. Erik is the one that could be doing whatever behind this wall. But the whatever that he's doing, I'm like, kind of not understanding it. Which isn't saying much. CVZ is not my forte. But I don't really get why this is better. Roach speed is faster. And I'm not going to sit here and say that roach speed isn't useful. But I wonder if it's really all that useful in this context. Perhaps if you were to choose between the 2 production tabs, you would say that +1 missile attack being faster looks a little juicier. Maybe not. Certainly you would not say that if you were building a bigger number of roaches and moving across the map with roach speed. But the number of roaches being built from Erik is not that impressive, and that is partially because of a very poorly timed supply block. Okay, maybe this actually was supposed to make sense. Maybe this was supposed to be 12 more roaches as he moved across the map with the first one, the first wave. And instead, it's 6 roaches as his first wave has already been rebuffed. So that's not definitely... It looks uglier than it should, I think is safe to say. Yeah. And Namshar is probably a little bewildered by this as well. He's like, wait, was that an attack? Is that what you're... Huh? But it looks like Erik's still going to go for an attack anyway. +1 missile will finish up for both players. We got Overlord drops over to the right for Erik. Is he going to soak up 8 roaches, perhaps into the main base? Just look for more of a multi-pronged attack rather than trying to overwhelm his opponents. This would also take advantage of someone going for a more typical and so slower roach speed if you're trying to attack in multiple places. But the roach speed actually kicks in as soon as Erik is about to attack. So it's, again, not... I feel like I can see what the potential of this was, but a couple of mechanical problems are ruining the idea. Queen is going to be target fired, so she can't attack the Overlord. Also possibly mess up the injects. As far as the trading goes, we can see it's really this little bits and pieces, but 3 queens overall have died. Didn't really realize that. Looks like Namshar tried to go for a counter attack. It was not going to work out. Erik has plenty of units. As far as the economy, I think they've been very similar for a long period of time. Just having to pull the drones right there caused a spike for Erik, but the drones have been within 1 or 2 of each other for the most part. It is Namshar, however, who is going into, once again, those faster upgrades. Not just faster +2 by about 15 seconds, but actually getting a +1 carapace as well. So Namshar is building to a better mid-game army. Mechanically, they both are having some difficulties. Another huge supply block for Erik. 9 overlords on the way, but also a supply block for Namshar. 4 overlords on the way. So because they both did it, I guess it's a wash. But 4 overlords now, wow. Namshar not under defending. Good number of roaches brought to the high ground. Are there enough roaches on the low ground as well? Yes, there is, but the roaches in the overlords come over here. Nice little maneuver there from Erik, who tries to also jump on top of those very vulnerable ravagers. Now he's going to try and catch the hatchery. That's going to cost him a few units. I see he's trying to pick up the units that were left behind, but that is an extremely dangerous thing to do when the army is attacking you. To focus fire something else entirely might open up the opportunity for a counterattack. It looks like that's not going to be the case here. The Overlord's still continuing to drop, or at least going to buy some time, force Namshar to reconsider a counterattack, if that's even something he was planning. But with so much going on, it looks like Namshar hasn't even thought about bringing an army across the map. He's still trying to track the Overlord, trying to track the army, and trying to replace his 3rd base, of which he absolutely needs. That 2-1 upgrade timing potential completely out the window. He will still have +1 carapace as an upgrade lead when things actually go toe-to-toe, but it's a little disappointing for Namshar, who at least will find 1 or 2 Ravagers, almost that second one, as Erik is maybe getting a little ahead of himself. Namshar continuing trying to bust out roaches, is once again about to be supply blocked. Oh, 1 Overlord is on the way. It's awful close, though. He is still banking resources, but so is Erik, actually. Erik, with over 1,000 minerals in the bank, needs to get his 4th base. 4th base, macro hatchery, whatever you need to do. 14 roaches finally pop as the larva popped as well. But we see injects are also being missed, and they are causing a lot of forced and unforced errors, I suppose. In this game, it's a little bit sloppier than it maybe should be. Erik's build opener, I think, really feeling the repercussions of those supply blocks, and then just generally as the game goes on, perhaps he would have had a lot more momentum if he had not been supply blocked. If he had had this 40 supply difference advantage 30 seconds ago, probably won already. Probably. As it is, he does still have an army advantage. By about 30. And he could still try to move in and kill Namshar, despite being down an upgrade. If he does not do this, Namshar is looking towards lurkers. He won't have hive technology for the lurkers, which, that means the lurkers aren't as good, but if you can get to 6 or 7 lurkers, I guess the magic count is actually 4, according to Wardian Solar. If he can get to lurkers, he'll be able to draw a line in the sand across at least his 3rd base, perhaps his natural. His 4th might be a little too far away, though. His 4th was not very quick, and it's also not secured. It might actually get up and running, though. Erik's 4th base really could have been so much faster, but his is only finishing around the same time. Overlord drops back into the main base are such a bother. Good lord. Namshar is basically just accepting that he has to deal with this and trying to win despite it. But unfortunately, it looks like this has really caused problems on his 3rd base. Those Ravagers were completely alone, taken down very quickly, and Erik's supply holding strong in that 40 advantage as more roaches try to come in here for Namshar from the main base. We also have the Overlord roaches to consider. No, it was a fake, actually, or they get cleaned up. Either way, they can save the reinforcements now, and Erik will hold on to the supply lead. He'll hold on to a little bit of an economic lead as well, and he'll finally get his own carapace upgrade finished. Still down in upgrades, but is that the most important upgrade? Is that going to make up for about 30 army supply difference? Namshar hopes so. He's once again trying to split his army correctly. And he's now lower on the Ravager count. Units that are very good at buying time. More roaches coming through for Namshar. Might be able to hold the line on the third base as the roaches do unload from the overlords. Erik with 40 army supply advantage, trying to get everything across the map ASAP to actually win this game, but Namshar just barely holding on. If he could afford one lurker, that would be a tremendous help, because I don't see any overseers here, and the Ravager counts also decreased for Erik as well, but he cannot afford a single lurker. He has one Hydra, and not enough gas to afford a lurker, not enough time to afford a lurker as well. Erik is looking to continue with this momentum and eventually win the game. Namshar's only advantage is that upgrade, and I just don't think it's going to cut it, as Erik holds on to an army supply lead, also now a 5-worker lead, jumping on top of the remnants of Namshar's third base army, and Namshar will eventually fall to the pressure of Erik. It took a little while, took multiple drops into the main base, but it is finally going to happen. Erik now up 60 supply as Namshar starts to trickle in reinforcements, which is just not what you want. GG. Erik with a solid 2-0 start to this best of 5. First with the cheese, into the aggression, into the attack, then into a little bit of cleverness with the roach drops. And that wasn't even the best possible roach drop he could have done. That could have started earlier. If he didn't get supply blocked, he could have been really abusing the Overlord drop roach attack on the third. Perhaps even before Namshar's own roach speed kicked in, which would have been the absolute best. But even though it wasn't the absolute best, Erik still pushed through. Eventually caught Namshar off guard just one too many times. So my, oh, hey. Thank you very much, Bruno, for the 5 gifted subs. Dancing Queen. What was I gonna say? So many of you have probably noticed behind that I have boxes and whatnot. I have been in the process of moving for the last couple of days. Did you guys know that moving is extremely exhausting and no one ever wants to do it? I bet you guys didn't know that. And the frustrating thing is that there's absolutely no organization as far as things you might need first and foremost. So we initially we slept on the ground with sleeping bags because the moving truck was yet to be there. So that was fun. And then we got our mattresses, but we could not find any linens. And then no linens and no pillows. And then this morning we realized we still hadn't found utensils or a coffee pot. Isn't that fun? It's fun. It is potentially the last game of this series. In the bottom left, it is Namshar. In the top right, it is Erik for the third best of 5 in the Big Brain Bouts. Presented by Basilisk. And the winner of this will be winning $100. The loser still paid for their time. $25 for what could be not even half an hour. ZVZ is pretty good. Although I would like to remind everyone that freelance does not work out that way often. $25 an hour, that's amazing. Okay, but you only get paid like every, you get paid 2 hours of every day. I'm like, oh, that's not amazing. But yeah, it's still very, very nice to have something to the losers as well. Really making it more of a show match rather than just like, oh, sorry, you lost, get the heck out of here. And continuing to support a lot of the up-and-comers. And while these two players aren't necessarily up-and-comers, they're lesser-known players, so I think absolutely deserve some spotlight on them. Namshar has always been one of the nicest guys in the community. I don't know Erik as much. I think I've certainly been to tournaments that he's been at, and he's been friendly. But Namshar I've actually known for quite some time. He was one of the original... what I call like a base trade TV sweetheart almost, the people that we would constantly follow because he was always so considerate about letting us into lobbies and like, making sure we were ready and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna lie, I guess as far as like a little bias, I might be a little biased towards Namshar, but I'm also very aware that his skills have declined. He, as I said, had a very tough time kind of getting that that sudden boost that a lot of the players do. Like Raynor suddenly just like boosted, you know, got way better and then just kept that level for a while. Namshar was like more incremental, but yeah, he's obviously having a tougher time, not necessarily full time anymore. And Erik's aggression is working out pretty well. In the first game, it didn't necessarily win the game, but consistent aggression paid off. And then in the second game, again, beginning was not necessarily all that great because he messed up the build order a little bit there, but the follow-up consistent pressure was very good from Erik. Thank you very much to the dono, which I'll get up in a second. Here we go. We got slow. Holy snakes. Really trying not to curse because I don't know the rules for this one, but thank you for Sloza. $100 Rinos. Nice work as always. Wow. Big love. Thank you so much. That is crazy. But we also got Erik going for another unorthodox build, so I do have to focus in here. Namshar going for something typical. He's got some lings across the map, looking to scout out what his opponent might be doing. These first couple of lings are very important, oftentimes to check for a ling all-in. A 2-base speedling all-in. Now they're going to see the lack of third base, and they might be able to dip into the natural to see that Roach Warren, but then they won't be able to stick around. You know, if they did, this game would not be as hard as it is. They can't stick around. They don't know if it's going to be speed finishing up and speedlings on the way, fast mutas, Nidus Worm, all those things I listed out last game. Same problems here. Different choice, though. It is going to be a Spire behind the wall. And Namshar is not going to know about this. Namshar can't afford to go for a lair to get an Overseer just to scout out what his opponent is doing. So he's going to stick to his guns, stick to his macro, and this time around he's going up to 3 bases with lings. So his economy will be looking quite nice. He actually has quite a few lings in the field, so he's using to try and bust through. No transfuses available as of yet, one in a second. And the Evolution Chamber would have provided some broodlings to help out, so I think it would have been safe anyway. The Evolution Chamber is behind it, fully forming a wall as well. Namshar can say, hey, I forced out 3 Evolution Chambers, 225 minerals, plus the drones, and hey, that's something. But only if these all finish, which they will not. Nice, slick. I almost didn't notice. But he did use this canceled Evolution Chamber to rebuild this one. Nicely done. Did not manage to get the cancel on this, though. It's a little unfortunate. It might have to rebuild his wall. Now, Namshar doing this and using his lings like this, there's almost no consequence to it, right? The only consequence, I would say, is if he's not paying attention to the what-ifs. The more that you're focused on what you're doing, sometimes the less focused you are on what your opponent could be doing. And that's the problem that I see here. Lings do manage to bust in, but no, that one was sniped. Good target fire. And the Broodlings took care of the rest. Namshar still has no idea that it's mutas. The mutas literally just popped as the Ling died. Overseer's forming, so it misses the opportunity to see the muta. Oh my god. Last possible second for Namshar to realize what's going on here. Now, that sounds bad, but I don't think it's actually all that bad. It's only 4 mutas, and queens can help out there while the Spore Crawlers build, and Spore Crawlers do build rather quickly. Erik also did not add on speed all that quickly, so there's not a threat of muta plus Ling that might be able to overwhelm Namshar on 3 bases, because he doesn't have a lot of army right now. So, you know, a couple lings here, mutas in there, and then you might have a couple of drones killed. Namshar threatens with the roaches, but I think literally only to bring the mutas back. That's going to buy the time necessary for spores and queens to pop. Erik is going to have to use this ling muta opener of his just to keep Namshar under his thumb, which is very possible. In fact, I think Erik, very much a muta player to me, or maybe not the most muta player to ever live, but I feel like I see him playing with mutas a lot. So I think he knows very much what he has to do. You know, it's all well and good if the surprise gets you the win. That's awesome. But he knows that if it doesn't, that he needs to just be the most obnoxious Zerg player ever and buy a lot of time and throw bodies across the map to try and confuddle his opponent. Little confuddling going on here. The queen's getting a little body blocked. I think that was intentional. A little Warcraft action, but no other queen dying. Just the one, I believe. This one's so close to death. Erik spending all this time to try and establish a third base and get his own drones up, but you can see that he's working from pretty far behind in that regard. I mean, at the end of the day, this is not a good situation for Erik yet. The potential to become a good situation is extremely high. And that's why facing against Muta players in any matchup actually is so obnoxious. I mean, for the professionals, we don't see Mutas in ZVT very often, or almost at all, right? But if you play ladder as a regular Joe, you know how annoying it is when they go into fast Mutas and you think you can move out, you're wrong. You think you can defend, you're wrong. I mean, the same thing does happen to some of the pros, and certainly in ZVZ. I mean, how many games did we see Cyril fall to mass Muta? Even when it seemed like he was totally on point with the defense. Tons of games over his career. So Erik is very familiar with that type of play. With this aggression, macro behind it, overwhelm eventually, perhaps. Namshar is very much the Zerg player who would be comfortable to defend. Comfortable, maybe a strong word. No one's comfortable against Mutas, but he is a macro defensive Zerg most of the time. So I'm sure he has had his fair share of dealing with these faster Muta builds into potential mass Muta or even potential tech swap, which is something that he has to be concerned about. Namshar doesn't know if his opponent's moving over into roaches or lings. He does still have an overlord over here somehow. Wait a minute. That's not supposed to happen. Wait a second. The Mutas missed one overlord on the field. There we go. That's giving a lot of good information. Every time they see a Muta, they know that there's more Muta investment. Every time they see a ling, that's not a roach. You know what I mean? So definitely kill that one. But we got Mutas in the main base, overwhelming the Lone Queen and Spore. Drones have to cancel their attempted spores, and this is going to be a decent amount of damage. I know Infestors are on the way, but they have yet to pop. They are about to pop. They are about to pop. They're in the natural. Ooh, Erik, that's very dangerous. That is extremely dangerous. Okay, we're good. Mutas will evacuate before the Infestors pop. Now, do they know about the Infestors? They saw the infestation pit, didn't they? Or it's gotta be. Yeah, no, there it was. Yeah, okay, so they know. And now Erik will be very cautious about how he moves in. He's not going to give up on his Ling Baneling Muta, though. I mean, he could swap into roaches at some point and make it a more of a mano-a-mano fight, but nope. Insisting on Ling Baneling Muta, hoping to overwhelm, but it's not looking likely for the overwhelming part. The supply of Namshar is still holding strong despite a couple of scary blips where the Mutas seem to take down a base. I don't know if Erik has actually done enough here. Oh, that's so extremely dangerous. Oh my god. The Lings go after the Infestors, which is the better plan. The Queen count is also pretty damn good. 14. Oh, there's the fungal. There it is. Not gonna be a fungal to pop though. Just damage on the Mutas. Hatchery did have to be... Yeah, that's a kill. It's a kill. And Erik is now on 4 bases, but his supply does not really bode well for the mass Ling Baneling Muta player. At some point in all of this aggression, he was kind of supposed to overtake Namshar's supply. Be up on 4 bases faster, on 80 drones much faster, and then maxing with Ling Baneling alongside his Muta count. And he just hasn't been able to do that. So Namshar has exactly the tools necessary to defend Ling Baneling Muta. Should Erik do some type of transition, it would be a little more questionable. And Erik is starting to work on that transition. Hive is on the way, Lurkerden as well. He's going to continue with the pressure just to hope that Namshar never attacks. And oh, look at this. Banelings actually killed that third base. 8 drones go down as well. Namshar is trying to spread out to stop these little battles from happening. Like, it's you're never going to really stop the Muta Ling Baneling player. I'm getting tired of saying that. You're never going to stop the style that Erik is playing necessarily, but you can certainly mitigate the damage once you're at a certain supply. You can spread out and stop the Banelings from rolling in all willy-nilly. I mean, Namshar could not stop it despite his spread. So another hatchery killed. This one not up yet. Muta's in the main base. There are 3 or 4 spores, I think, but... Oh, and Hydras, that's what it is. The mutas, the more aggressive they are, the more risks they end up taking, the more Namshar might be able to determine that there is a transition on the way. Because the mutas not only are continually trying to kind of find the last bit of damage they might be finding for the rest of the game, but they're also revealing they're not being increased in numbers. It's 20 mutas, not 30. So Namshar should be picking up on a possible transition at this point in time, despite 0 scouting on the other side of the map. After that Overlord died, nothing else has happened. And Namshar knows that he is directing himself to the perfect late-game Zerg army so that no matter what Erik is doing, Namshar will be able to defend. The only thing that would really shock and awe Namshar would be a greater spire for Broodlords, which are notoriously bad in this matchup, but surprise Broodlords sometimes can work. Both players now getting into lurkers, but only one of them, I think, adding on the upgrade right now. Namshar has a hive, has a lurker den, but no upgrades are on the way. I just gotta double, triple check this. Yeah. Upgrades for his hydras, upgrades for his roaches, but not for his lurkers. The roach tunneling claws might have been revealed, or maybe this was coincidence, but Erik's on top of it with overseers. Erik is on 5 bases, by the way, so I think his mid game was a little concerning. It kind of felt like he slowed down quite a bit. The mutas were active, but his situation did not seem like it was getting any better. That supply being lower than Namshar up until basically right now was a little concerning. It does look like Erik has bought himself that time to get to the superior economy, superior map control, and perhaps the superior army as lurkers actually dive forward into the queens looking to kill his opponents. That might have been a little bit of an overextension. Namshar also had lurkers, and I think most importantly, the queens provided more damage soak than Erik was anticipating. He thought he could jump on top of his opponent's lurkers, I guess. Did he though? Did he actually just not realize there was lurkers? He might have not realized there was lurkers. But then the queens took forever to fall, regardless of what Erik was hoping for there. If he thought he could kill the queens immediately, no problem, he was wrong about that. If he thought he could jump on top of the lurkers and kill them, he was wrong about that. And Erik was just kind of wrong in general, so he is now down in supply. But he is the one with the superior economy, and he does have the option of adding on ultras apparently, which he is going to go for. Ultras to try and overwhelm this setup, which they'll be very good at. What Namshar needs to do is build a little more SimCity to hope to work against ultras. But Namshar might not be thinking defensively anymore. He is finally going to move out for the attack. He's got to be careful, ever. He doesn't know what Erik is reinforcing with. Erik's reinforcements, though, not coming in very quickly. Where's the max out? Where's the supply? Erik also supply blocked. Does not have the full army potential, and he lets those lurkers at Namshar get right up top of that third base. Ultras come in here prior to Chitinous plating actually being done, so they are not particularly effective, and Namshar might be choosing the right time to strike. Erik is in trouble. His Vipers are getting destroyed on the right side with a miscontrol, and Erik is actually floundering at this point. He does not know how to hold off here. Namshar's attack down the middle of altitude looks like it is going to win this game. Namshar's supply dominating his opponents at this point. It felt like Erik gained some control, lost control, gained some control, and then when he lost control for the final time, it crashed into a river. Wasn't even a little bumper accident. It was a full-on crash. This is going to be it. Namshar not going to go down without a fight. Gonna put at least 1 point on the board. Even as the ultras come in finally with their chitinous plating, you can see how effective they could have been. Ling's hitting surrounds as well. Namshar going to lose his frontline army, but not his lurkers. There's no overseer. Oh, no. But it's too late. It is too late. Erik, I think, was supposed to be in a fine position. This I will argue. I think his 4th base was supposed to be protected. He would have maxed out faster. He could have maxed out faster. He could have had chitinous plating a little bit faster. He could have had his lurkers on the high ground as opposed to behind his hatchery. Everything could have been that much better for Erik leading up to that fight. But a mixture of not realizing, not positioning his army, unfortunate upgrade timing with chitinous plating being 15 seconds too late, and then not maxing out, which I actually don't know how to explain that one. He had larva, he had resources, but I guess he was trying to build ultras specifically, so that's why the 5 supply or whatever it was wasn't enough. He was supply blocked, I guess is what I'm saying. And then he had Vipers, which would have been beautiful against his opponent's lurkers, but he just, he miscontrolled them. He let them die over to the right side. And so it's officially game over. Namshar has won the macro game. Erik is going to tap out, and we are going to head into a game 4. I think Erik misplayed that one a little bit more than Namshar won it. I'm not going to say it was a throw, because it was far more complicated. You could even argue that Namshar was undoubtedly ahead when he was leading up to 4 bases and a higher supply. But it did feel like Erik was getting situated into that fine 5-6 base economy that can flood Lings and Ultras to bust down a defensive Zerg or surround an offensive Zerg. He was getting there. He was basically there, except for the supply block, not knowing the army was moving out, and, well, the chitinous planning being very unfortunately timed. So we get ourselves a game number 4 in the bottom left of Royal Blood. It is Erik. In the top right, it is Namshar. Thank you, the Vervelvin. The tier 1 sub. It's a fun name. The Vervelvin. Erik loves this opener, doesn't he? Yes, he does. I can't even really begin to break down that last game because it was so oddly paced. It was the pacing that really threw me off. It's like I understand why these things happened. I've got the God vision. I can figure this out, but it still felt wrong. A 2-base Muta build takes a little while to get its motors going, but it usually does around the time they secure a 3rd base, basically. If the mutas are out and they get a 3rd base and there's no roach attack interrupting them, usually, let's say like 10 or 11 mutas manage to buy time to get the muta player up to 60 drones, 3 bases. And then they're really churning at that point, you know? And then depending on how the game is looking, they can invest more into army or into economy. And it just felt like Erik had opened up that opportunity to do that thing, but then didn't drone perhaps when he could have, maybe made more mutas and more Ling Baneling attacks when he should have droned, because obviously those Ling Baneling muta attacks investments didn't pay off. He didn't end up winning that game, where maybe he could have instead added on 10 drones, then 20 Lings, and been a little better off for a more powerful mid game. Because that's what he's certainly hitting for. And you go those fast mutas, you want to get to that powerful mid-game, you want to be the oppressor, you want to stop the defender from feeling comfortable, and it just didn't have that same punch. So then the rest of the game was a little more complicated due to it. Namshar did everything that he should. I will stay with my opinion that Erik kind of mishandled the situation he found himself in. But, kudos to Namshar. He did what he was basically supposed to, which sounds like a low bar, I realize, but it's difficult to do against a Ling Baneling muta player. He stayed calm, collected, kind of accepted the punches when they were thrown at him, like his 3rd base got killed and he didn't panic. And then he did decide an attack point, which obviously was very good for him. Had he waited just 10 seconds longer, Erik gets scouting, Erik gets chitinous plating, Erik gets maxed out. So Namshar really choosing a very fine time to go for an attack. And Namshar was one of the first players that I feel like I identified having a kind of a lack of a killer instinct. He was more prone to defending and macroing than anything else. And towards the end of his full-time pro gaming career, which I think kind of ended in 2019, I believe, he was much better at that. So we still see some of that, like almost like a mix. He's a little more brazen perhaps because he's a little more of a semi-pro nowadays, but also because he had learned over his pro gaming experience to do it. And then some, unusual defensive moves, like not pushing out. He's kind of like all over the place sometimes. So that was absolutely perfect. Very good time for him to move out. And now we have Erik once again set up on 2 bases going into a Roach Warren, but this time it is not for a wall. We can see the production tab, the magic of observers. Production tab shows speed finishing, Roach is on the way, Ling's going to reinforce, and Namshar is none the wiser, I believe. He saw the Roach Warren on the front, and thought, hey, the last two games, you've used that only to defend. Now realizing he's about to be attacked, the Overlord, the first sights, the first scouts, is it going to be enough of a scout timing to actually save Namshar's life? Cancels that +1 upgrade, needs every last penny put into army right here, right now. Cancels some reinforcements that were coming on to third base. They would not be helpful anyways. Cannot save the queen from the third, but hopefully her sacrifice is a good one if it bought just a couple of extra seconds. Full wall coming down as Namshar needs as much time as possible. 2 Spine Crawlers will finish, Roaches will pop out, and Namshar will have an equivalent army and defender's advantage. I think at this point in time, he has lived. He is fine. And now it is a question of, can he survive on 3 bases? It looks like guaranteed no. Just these Lings alone will take care of the third base, which means that Erik might have a chance to macro this out. He is down 4 drones, but that's not really all that bad, especially as 7 drones are on the way. Namshar lost his Roach Warren, which pretty much ensures that Erik will not be counterattacked. And unbeknownst to Erik, Namshar is also supply blocked, so definitely no counterattack here. Erik trying to maybe even bait out the roaches for his Lynx around, but at this point I think the roach numbers are a little too good for Namshar to actually be overwhelmed. Evolution Chamber starts up +1 missile, and that would be something Erik would love to cancel, but very unlikely. Namshar adds on a lair, more roaches, but then here comes the drones. I don't think he can really all in from this position. It would be a little scary if he did, though. Erik trying to move over into a Spire and a third base, his own upgrades as well. Investing a lot in the things that are not here, right now. But Namshar doesn't know that. Is just focused on pushing back the army that's harassing him, but then lets Lings into the main base, so that is the exact opposite of what he wanted. Lings grabbing 1, perhaps 2 queens, yes indeed, and just running around and causing chaos, buying more time for this precious Spire to finish, and Namshar does not give chase. Not that I think he really could, but also is clearly being run around a little bit. He's losing track of armies. Oh, I feel like an all-in is now the only idea, but that won't work. The Spire's finishing. Now it absolutely will not work, so Namshar gonna have double the army supply and nothing to do with it. And an attack towards your opponents as mutas are making, and you have only just begun to move across the map without roach speed. Yeah, the mutas are gonna be fine. The mutas are gonna take care of it. Be a little different if Namshar was already in pursuit. Then there's a lot to be done there. Throw roaches in every single base and hope that there's enough damage done. But now it's just completely about Erik's control with the mutas. So it's going to be similar to last game, where it's still a very low econ situation for a muta player, but they should be able to successfully contain Namshar on 3 bases, also contain him to his bases. And then Erik will hopefully, ideally, I should say, ideally thrive behind it, which he didn't necessarily thrive in the last game. If I could boil it down to a sentence. Looks like Namshar knows that it is desperate times call for desperate measures. He is going to go for the attack. Erik, realizing there's no defense on the third base, must be an attack down the middle of the map. Sends his mutas back home to help defend. Now, the mutas will not take care of everything immediately, and so this could still cause problems. Erik has nothing else on the ground that I can see. Where's the army? Coming back, actually, because they came to kill the third base. So now they're coming back into their own bases, which is certainly more awkward. Roach speed also finally kicked in for Namshar, so he can scuttle around and get into every nook and cranny. And Erik is going to be taking losses here. Queens die, drones will die, perhaps even a base if Namshar chooses to focus fire. No, he does not, and it looks like he will lose too much army to start focus firing. Still, 20 drones dead. Namshar now 7 workers ahead, though. That's it. That's actually not that impressive. Need to do more damage because the counterattack is going to be very fearsome. Erik can counterattack with his Roach and Muta and maybe win the game, or he can only attack with his Mutas, in which case he still will get damage done, and the Roaches can secure home and make sure this is an easier game for Erik, which, it looks like it might just be an easy game no matter what. Only a couple of Roaches have to stay behind for Erik to deal with Namshar, who got Burrow. Did not see that in production tab. That's an odd one. Only saves 1 unit, though, and Erik now has a playground. He knows that he has gained back the map control. He saved all 3 bases. Get back the droning. You have that time. You know the muta's going to get your scouting. They're going to get their harassment. They're going to take over the map. You know you have time. Erik does not have to build army to try and win the game right now. So I'm actually a little concerned as to, you know, the fact that he is building army right now. That's not completely necessary. A couple of burrowed roaches went unaccounted for. That's why they snuck into the main base. So 3 more drones will die. But absolutely, Erik can be building drones. His roach army is more than satisfactory, especially if the mutas are doing their job and tracking Namshar's army. They were a little late to doing so previously, but now they should be on top of it. Maybe they go kill some overlords as well. Yeah, that's what they're gonna do. And Namshar is, well, almost certainly SOL. He's trying to get to Roach Hydra, but off of 2 bases, it's an awfully expensive setup. 2 minutes, 2 bases nearing 10 minutes too, so a lot of minerals now depleted, and there is the final attack. Erik doing the attack while droning up, funnily enough, but realizing he just had the numbers. A couple of spines did help out here. 1 spine still alive, still helping, but Erik's supply is not all here anyway. Because he got 24 more drones back at home, an entire 3rd base, and the mutas could still run amok. They have cleared up almost every last overlord, almost. 2 of them snuck over to the bottom rights, but Namshar, he doesn't need the supply, and that's not a good thing. He doesn't need the overlords, because he's stuck at 70 supply. And Erik now could just build up to, let's say, perfect saturation on all 3 bases. So maybe 8 more drones by looks of things, and then build nothing but roaches. Would probably be a very safe thing to do. I think building roaches right now is also pretty safe. He is still 17 workers ahead after all. It's whatever he wants to do, you know? Roach speed's done for Erik, +1 attack's done. He's working his way up to +2. Namshar might be able to get enough Hydras to deflect the mutas, but then he has a bigger problem, and that is the amount of roaches that Erik can build. If Namshar was only building roaches, he still will not be able to match the supply and production of his opponents. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't get Hydras, the mutas do big damage. It's not good. It's not pretty. And Erik is pretty good at TPC. You know, as many of the other players in the Latin American region did, he did struggle versus the Terrans, Special and Kalazur. But there are a lot of Zergs in that region, occasionally a Protoss, and Erik was always pretty good against them. And then as they have all merged under North America, I believe Erik also displayed some fine ZVZ in that region. Erik might get supply blocked, but that's okay. His army's already big enough. 40 armor supply above his opponents. I would say probably a superior army, too. The Hydras really need a lot more buffer. They are glass cannons. The Ravagers are actually pretty freaking good. That is going to be that. Erik, with a 3-1 victory, wins the 3rd best-of-5 of the Big Brain Bouts. Gets $100 in his pockets. Namshar will be getting 25. Nicely done. That means we are going to be headed into our final match of the day or night, depending on where you are. It's going to be Showtime versus a Laser, continuing the trend of one aggressive player versus the more macro-oriented player. Obviously being our biggest match of the night. Thank you again, Basilisk Research Group, for the 10 gifted subs. We'll get the vetoes done and the map set up. But for now, I'm going to take about a 5-minute break, however long it takes for them to get situated. And we'll be back with the final best of 5.